Hello there, grade 12s. Welcome to the first lesson of vertical projectile motion. Right. So today we are going to be looking more into the concept of vertical projectile motion. What is vertical projectile motion all about? Right. Okay. So now, please make sure that you have your examination guideline as prescribed by the Department of Basic Education by your side, as we are trying to explain the concept of what vertical projectile motion is. Right. So just to be specific and try to elaborate on this, vertical, now it has to do with up and down movement. We would all agree with that, right? Now, we would need to understand now what is a projectile and what kind of motion are we looking at in vertical projectile motion, right? So now the only thing that we are familiar with since we just arrived in grade 12, we only know of vertical, right? So now let us go on to check. Now, what is a projectile? Okay. Now, when you check your examination guideline, you'd find that, okay, now when we are talking about a projectile, we are talking about an object, right? So that's the first important thing there, right? So please don't write it according to how I'm writing it, but please writing according to the examination guideline. So according to examination guideline, it says that it's an object which has been given initial velocity and then it moves under the influence of gravitational force only, right? Please be cognizant and please watch out for such terms, right? So the first thing that we know in a projectile is that we are dealing with an object. Now, what is happening with this object that we are dealing with here? The first thing that we are told is that it has been given initial velocity, right? So we are familiar with velocity. We have been dealing with velocity even in Newton's your momentum and impulse, right? So we are familiar with what velocity is all about, right? Okay, now let us go on and check what the rest of the definition says. Now, it's the object that has been given initial velocity and then moves under the influence of gravitational force. So we are looking at gravitational force. Now, gravitational force in this topic is on the spotlight. Now, what do we know about gravitational force? Now, gravitational force also results in what we call gravitational acceleration, which is at 9.8 meters per second squared. Right. Okay. So that is what we know about gravitational force so far. Now, it means that when we talk about a projectile now, don't be worried or think too much of what now projectile is. We are talking about an object. That's the first thing here. So we have an object here. It might be a ball. It might be any other object that we are talking about. But this object has been given initial velocity. So for example, we have thrown this ball upwards or we have thrown this ball downwards. Right. So we have given it the initial velocity. Right. So initial velocity can also be 0 meters per second. Right. So that's also velocity, right? It also counts as velocity, right? Okay. So it has been given initial velocity and then moves under the influence of gravitational force only. Now, the key word is that only. It only moves under the influence of gravitational force. So if you don't include that only, you might forfeit a mark there. So please make sure that you are very aware and please be conscious of such definitions, because this is 2 marks. It's either you get it all or you miss it all, right? There's no 1 mark there. Okay, so now what is the second term, right? We were saying that we are dealing with the vertical projectile motion. So now we know that we are dealing with the up and downward movement of a certain object that has been given initial velocity, then moves under the influence of gravitational force only, right? Okay, so now it's telling us again that this projectile is moving under a certain motion. Now, what is that certain motion we are talking about? That is what we call free fall. So we are dealing with a free fall. That's the second definition that you need to know in vertical projectile motion. Right? What is a free fall? Now, a free fall, we are taking into consideration the motion You see, now we're going back to the concept, right? We are talking about the motion with the only force acting on the object being gravitational force, right? So we are talking about an option upon which the only force acting there is gravitational force. So in simple terms, that's what vertical projectile is all about. Now that is the concept, the whole concept of what we're going to be calculating here, what we're going to be dealing with, the different scenarios. It all stems from just an object that is moving up or down, and it is moving under the influence of gravitational force only. Now that's the only thing. So in the next lesson, now we're going to be looking more into the equations of motion that we're going to be using to calculate all these components of a projectile in free fall, right? We will go on to look at the triggers that we need to look at when we are answering questions, right? So I hope that this breakdown of the concept of vertical projectile motion was very helpful to you guys. So please make sure that you also share this video to other people who you feel might be in need of it, right? Please don't be a person who is stingy with information. So make sure that you help other people so that they also succeed as you do. We are in a business of helping each other out. Right, so I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and please make sure that you do subscribe to our YouTube channel. You follow us on TikTok and all our social media platforms there. Right, so at MM Tutorials. I hope that this guys was useful to you, and have a great day.